week 2 we are just finishing up with, and so let's jump on the scales and see how you did last week.
Iris Alvarado.
204.6 for Bev.
Amber wins. Take 2, 166.4.
Emily, 149.8.
Nisha,
218. Scholar, 28.
Ikea 350.0, 350.0.
All right, I've got some standings right here. So in 9th place in the last 2 weeks, down 2.6 pounds, 1.17%, Scholar. In 8th place, down 2.8 pounds, 1.28%, Nisha. In 7th place, down 6.2 pounds, 1.74%, Nakia. In 6th place, down 3 pounds, 1.77%, Amber. In 5th place, down 4.2 pounds, 2.01%, Bev. In 4th place, down 8.5 pounds, 3.3%, Etienne. Top 3 in 3rd place, down 9 pounds, 3.8%, Iris. In 2nd place, down 7.8 pounds, 4.94%, Emily. And holding down the 1st place spot 2 weeks in a row, down 12.6 pounds in 2 weeks. Guys, like killing it, dude. 5.54%. He has lost 5.5% of his body in 2 weeks, Brett. So awesome job. So which here's what's so cool. So you guys have only been doing the program for 2 weeks, and look at all the changes already. Look at how far, look at how far you've come. Now that's not a, recognizing how far you've come, it can be a slippery slope, because it's not like you're like, yeah, I've arrived, look at me. But it is important while you're still evolving, while you're still fighting to where you want to be. You're not there yet, but you're not where you were. None of you are where you were 2 weeks ago. So what we're going to chat about tonight is we're going to chat about triggers, okay? Emotional triggers, because all of us have things that trigger us to emotionally eat. And I have met very few human beings on the planet that have not struggled with emotional eating. Whether they have a weight issue or not, this is something that a lot of people struggle with. And so emotional eating can have a lot of different faces. Some people eat when they're happy, because happy is an emotion. So some people eat because, they had a good day, or they got a promotion, or, some people, they have sex and they have endorphins and then they go eat, right? Like, oh, we just worked off some calories, let's go eat. Some people, their son won the baseball game and it's like, let's go get ice cream. So some people eat when they're happy. Frustration is another emotion. So some people have a frustrated time, a frustrated day, a frustrated argument, a frustrated day on the job. We can also eat out of frustration. Loneliness can be an emotion. So if we're lonely, we're feeling alone, we're feeling abandoned, we're feeling, also loneliness gives us full permission to eat because nobody sees us doing it. When I was overweight and my husband would leave, I would totally eat. I ate differently in front of him than I did around him. Or I ate differently not around him than I did around him. Are you with me? when he wasn't there, I can remember, like I would have croissants and ice cream. And then I would stop at Moe's and get my naked nachos. And I would sit down and watch a football game with like a tray and a couch and like 4 or 5 different things around me on the couch. And I would eat, I would get full, and I would fall asleep and take a nap. And then I would take everything and bag it up in a bag and shove it to the bottom of the trash can so that when he came home, he would not see all the evidence of my eating. Would I ever have done that in front of him? No freaking way. And so loneliness can be a trigger. Sadness can be a trigger. If we're sad, if we're disappointed, grieving can be a trigger. And so what we've got to realize is that we live on planet Earth and we're never gonna ever get rid of emotions. We're never gonna get rid of sadness. It's part of life. We're never gonna get rid of, we're all gonna feel sad at some point. We're all gonna feel frustrated. We're all gonna feel happy. We're all gonna feel glad. We're all gonna feel sad. If you think about the emotions, all the emotions are part of the human experience on the planet, right? So it's not changing the emotion. Unless you plan on building your own planet with no other people, are you going to get rid of frustration? No, probably not. So if you are, what most people try to do is they try to avoid the feeling. I'm going to avoid being frustrated. I'm going to avoid, but you can't. It's not changing the feeling. It's not changing the emotion. And for some of us, is anybody else, like you got struck by all the emotions. So you eat when you're sad, you eat when you're happy, you eat when you're frustrated, you eat when you're lonely, like all these, that was me. Anybody else, like you eat for several of the emotions? The rest, okay, several of you. Yeah, me too. I like so when something good happened, it was like, yeah, let's go get pizza. Let's celebrate with wine. And most of us learned this from the time we were a kid. You won your Little League game and your parents said, oh my gosh, good job, Johnny. Let's go get ice cream. Or you got all A's, let's get pizza. And so food for a lot of us became a reward from the time we were little. For those of you that are parents, do not make food a reward or a punishment. For several of you, you also heard when you were little, if you don't finish all the food on your plate, you're not going to get any dessert. Anybody hear that? You weren't allowed to get dessert if you didn't finish all your food, or you weren't allowed to get up from the table. So many of us were taught to overeat from the time we were little. Anybody see their parents? I can remember my parents at work. My mom would have a frustrated day at work, and whenever we got takeout was because my mom had a rough day. She would have a rough day. And so she'd be like, that's it. I'm not cooking tonight. And then we'd get pizza. So I learned to eat when I was sad, to eat when I was mad, to eat when I was busy, to eat when I was frustrated, because I saw everybody else around me doing it. So here I became an adult. And when I would encounter any of these emotions, I allowed myself to be triggered. They were triggers. And I would respond by eating. And so the goal is never to get rid of the trigger, because you're never going to get rid of frustration. You're never going to get rid of loneliness. You're never going to get rid of any of those things. You're never going to get rid of grieving. We're going to lose things or people, or we're going to lose stuff. It's a part of the human experience. It's part of life, right? So what we have to do is change the way we deal with the emotion. So the first thing we have to do when it comes to emotional eating is we have to realize what triggers we have. For some of us, work can be a trigger. Stress can be a trigger. Arguing with our spouse can be a trigger. Late nights can be a trigger. Not feeling good enough as a parent can be a trigger. Driving in the car, road tripping, running to the store used to be one of my triggers. Whenever I got in the car, I immediately thought, what drive-through did I want to go through? I was always eating in my car, always. Now that I don't do that, I can't even tell you that I never eat in my car anymore, like ever. I always have a bottle of water in my car and that's pretty much it. It's crazy to think about, but one of my triggers used to be driving. I would always drive. So when I first started doing this program and losing weight, it was like, okay, what did I take with me when I was driving? I had back then what I called a success stash. So I would take a rice cake and an apple, or I would take some carrot sticks or some celery. I would not get in the car with just water then. I would always get in the car with something when we would take a road trip and we were going to be driving for 17 hours. It was okay. I have a bag of cucumbers. I have a bag of carrots. I have some turkey pepperoni. I have some diced up chicken that's been cut. I have some things that I can snack on in the car. So if I'm triggered to eat, what do I got? I don't got chips. I don't got trail mix. I didn't have any. And then let's just say I was out longer than I was expected to. I was okay. If I'm in the car and I get triggered, instead of looking for a gas station, I'm going to look for a grocery store. So I had to make the flip in my mind. Instead of putting in my GPS racetrack, it was Kroger, Walmart. And I would go in and get an apple. I would go in and get rice cakes. Whenever I was traveling, I always had apples with me because apples were good because they don't get, unless you're just really banging your bags around, they stay. I normally stick my apple in a koozie, like the little foam things that people give away for free that goes on a canned drink. I stick my apple in that. And I travel with, I'll put 2 or 3 apples in my bag. I'll put a sleeve of rice cakes and that's what or some carrots. And that's what I travel with. The little tuna pouches. So again, it's figuring out first and foremost, what are my triggers? What are your triggers? What is it that triggers you to eat? And this is going to be something that you're going to work on this week. But this is something that as you think about it, and as you start putting a focus on this, all of a sudden, you're going to feel yourself being triggered. And how do you know you're triggered? Because all of a sudden, you're going to have this impulse that I want to eat. I want a cupcake. I want some chocolate. I want some cheesecake. I want some wine. I want some guacamole and chips. I want some fried chicken. I want some whatever it is that you normally like to eat when you're triggered. So whenever you have that moment where something happens, maybe if someone made you feel stupid, maybe you were embarrassed, maybe you were humiliated, maybe you didn't feel good enough or like you measured up, maybe you felt like you messed up. But you're going to start realizing what these triggers are. And that's the most important thing, is recognizing them, because anything in darkness, anything that we leave in darkness controls us. When you start bringing light to it, it no longer has the same control over you. So the first step is recognizing what is it that triggers me. And you will end up with a list. You'll start out with a couple. And then as the week and the next week unfolds, you're going to be like something's going to happen. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, why do I want to eat right now? What just happened? Instead of just thinking, so many of you are like, man, I don't know what's up with these cravings. A lot of times it's not a craving, it's something triggered us. I'm not going to say you never have a craving, but a lot of times we think it's a craving and we were just triggered by something. Sometimes success can be a trigger. You've lost 5 pounds. You're feeling good. You've been totally committed for 2 weeks, baby. I deserve a cookie. Because the worst thing about success is a little bit. So sometimes we start having a little bit of success. The truth is, we all have a commitment threshold. We all have a commitment threshold where it's how long we're committed before we start getting more uncommitted. All of us do. Okay. And so commitment is kind of like bathing. You have to recommit often. This program is not you committed 2 weeks ago and you're once and done. No, sometimes you have to recommit daily, sometimes multiple times a day. No, I'm committed. These pretzels don't align with my goal. This avocado doesn't align with my goal. This chicken doesn't align with my goal. And none of this food at this party aligns with my goal. The food that I packed does, but not the food here because I don't know who prepared it, what's in it. No, thank you. No, thank you. And so as as time goes on, you're going to start recognizing more and more triggers. And because we're no longer expecting the triggers to go away, and because you're not going to live on an island by yourself, it's okay. Next time this happens, instead of eating, what will I do instead? So the next time I get frustrated and I feel the feeling of frustrated, I feel the emotion of frustration, what will I do the next time I get frustrated instead of eat? So for me in the very beginning, our driveway is just over a quarter of a mile long one way. So for me, when I felt frustrated as a mother, because in that season I had a newborn and a toddler. So whenever I feel frustrated, when I started homeschooling both of them and I was the homeschool teacher, whenever I felt frustrated, instead of eating, I'm going to walk down my driveway by myself and back, or I'm going to take the kids on a walk because, when they were really little, I couldn't just be like, peace out, I'll be back. They were, couldn't do that, right? So I was going to take a walk down my driveway, or I was going to go and splash some cold water on my face. Because one of my triggers was if I got in an argument with my husband, which didn't happen a lot, or even if I didn't like his tone. Because I grew up in a household where my parents yelled and they called names and they threw things, and it just was not a great environment. And so I am very sensitive to any voice being raised. Like if my husband we don't yell like ever, but if he even gets a tone with me, I'm like, no, you're not going to speak to me that way. So if he got a tone with me, even a tone, I was very sensitive to that. And I would respond back to him, which would spur on an argument. And so it was like, no, and then I would eat, right? So it was no, when I'm triggered by his tone, I'm going to go in the bathroom, I'm going to put some cold water on my face. And so it was removing myself from the situation and getting control of my emotions. Does that make sense? And so I'm just giving you some ideas of things that you can do. One time it was running up and down the stairs 2 and 3 times. It's just shifting because hear me. All you are is shifting what your brain is focused on. That's what you're doing. You're shaking it up so that your brain isn't focused on eat. If I'm on the road and some guy, whatever your trigger is, it's changing. If I'm at work and if work is a trigger, what will you do at work the next time you're frustrated? The next time you're upset? The next time your boss is a jerk and you don't feel valued and you don't feel appreciated and you feel like you're doing the job of 2 people and you want to walk? What will you do the next time you feel overwhelmed? And so it's making a plan, because hear me. Will the feeling, if overwhelmment is one of your triggers, is the overwhelmment going to stop? The feeling of overwhelmment, is it going to stop? Probably not. So it's not expecting that. It's changing your behavior. You will never control this. You will never control what happens, the circumstances. The only thing you can control is how will you react to the circumstance? That's all you can control. That's all we can ever control. So, let me look at my notes here, making sure before I move on, I've gotten through everything that I want to get through in that part. Oh, because we just went through this, I don't think I mentioned this one. Holidays. Holidays can be a trigger. Parties, social settings can be a big trigger. Social settings were a huge trigger for me. Food bullies were a trigger. People questioning what I was eating, why I wasn't eating stuff. In the beginning, I would cave all the time. If someone was like, oh, you don't want a cupcake? Are you sure? Here was another big trigger. This is a popular one. Free food. Free, F-R-E-E. food can be a huge, huge, huge trigger. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys like 1 minute, and I want you to jot down, just after me going through this, what are some of your, after me just talking about this, off the top of your head, what are 2 or 3 of your triggers, or as many as you can think of? I feel like we need some elevator music. So I'll give you guys another example. So one of my big triggers was late night eating. And I could do good all day long. And it was like another broad came and inhabited my body after 9:30 p.m. Somebody else showed up and it was just the wildest thing. And so it was like, okay, I'm not expecting this temptation to go away. I've created a habit out of this. So the next time I get triggered by late night eating, late night snacking, what will I do? And so this is where the sign came from. You're bored, you're not hungry, shut the damn door. To remind myself, you're not hungry, Carmen, you are not hungry. You've had more than enough food. And so there's a couple of things I would do. Again, well, we're going to talk about next week, the importance of our words, but I would literally talk to myself and I would be like, because I used to panic when I was hungry. I had an irrational fear of being hungry. And so whenever my stomach would growl, I would feed it. And so if it was late night and my stomach would growl, I'd be like, yeah, stomach, you're hungry. You've had all you're going to have today. So if you're hungry, you can go eat some of the cellulite off my butt. That's what you can do because you're getting nothing else. And I would just talk to that. And instead of making me feel like there was something I couldn't have, I felt empowered. And it was like, no, I don't need to go to bed full because I had a habit of going to sleep, ending the night full. So when all of a sudden I wasn't full at night, it was like this new sensation. My stomach felt empty. It was rumbling. It was grumbling. It was talking to me. And so it was like, okay, the next time I get the craving at night to eat, what will I do? I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to drink water or I'm going to drink 0-calorie tea. So I got tea. I think I went out and bought like $30 worth of tea. I got some liquid stevia drops and I would make tea. And so at night I would sit there with my mug and I would sit there with my peppermint tea with my vanilla cream stevia. And it felt dessert-like. It was hot, it was warm, it was savory, and it took the edge off. I was still giving myself something, but it was a 0-calorie tea. Does that make sense? And so, or I would drink water, or sometimes I would just talk. I eventually named my inner fluffy girl. I named her Barbara. I'd be like, no, Barbara, not today, honey, not today. And so, And I share these things with you because, again, your brain, your mind is the most powerful tool you have. And it is either working for you or against you. And for most of us, our mind is working against us. How do you know that? Because we all started off fluffy, right? Your mind convincing you needed more food, was that working for you or against you? Working against you. It was working against your goals, what you want to do with your life. And so it's realizing that sometimes you've got to flip the script and you've got to change the perception, the perspective, how your inner person is thinking, how your inner person is seeing things, how you choose to see things matters. So all of a sudden, when my first perspective was, oh my gosh, I'm hungry, I'm going to bed. Oh, I think I need some more food. I need another protein. The second perspective was, no, Barbara, if you're hungry, go to eat some frickin' cellulite, honey. Which perspective made me feel strong, in control, and empowered? Not the first one. The second one did. And so, number one, you're going to recognize the trigger. Okay. Number two, what will you do the next time this happens? Because it will happen again. What is the thing that you will do the next time it happens? Will you do a workout? Will you splash cold water on your face? Will you drink water? Will you drink tea? Will you, count to 10? Whatever it is, will you go take a bath if you're at home? It really depends on where the trigger is and how you're being triggered and what's going on, obviously. But it's having a plan of action. It's being prepared for the next time this happens. Here's my plan, and here's what I'm going to do. So that way, the next time it happens versus being caught flat-footed and just falling back onto old habits. You now have a plan of success of the next time this happens. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to respond. I'm going to choose to be in control of my emotions instead of them being in control of me. And it literally, I had it written out. And I almost made like a playbook for my emotional eating. Just like a coach has a playbook for their team on how to win. You have a playbook for how to win against this thing called emotional eating, which is ruled and reigned in most of our lives for far too long. So your question tonight is going to be, what is the biggest trigger that you need to deal with? Okay. I know a lot of you have a list, but we're just going to talk about the one you identify right now is the biggest one, the one you deal with the most.
Probably for me, it's the work stress of being overextended. There's so many projects, they're all due at the same time, they're all due now. I've got 4 different bosses, and each of them thinks that their job is more important than the other ones. So trying to meet all those deadlines. And what I end up doing before was, instead of having breakfast, I would grab an Egg McMuffin on the way in, which is delicious, but the potato thing is even more delicious. And then on the way home, if I had to do night work, I would drop the grandkids off. And by the way, Katie talks too much, but I'd drop the grandkids off and would grab a Mountain Dew and M&Ms because I needed the energy to work. But what I found this last 2 weeks, first time we do the portions for the week, I was like, this is way too much food. But it's not. I'm better and getting healthier doing it. But I also found I need to spread them out into 6 meals a day. So instead of putting 2 vegetables on the plate, I get the carrot sticks or the celeries and make that to keep me from getting that hunger in between meals. Because the first few days was like, man, I am hungry. And it's not lunchtime yet. But it wasn't that. It was I've got too many things. I'm overwhelmed and I'm really not prioritizing. But I also learned I need to prioritize me first. And I actually was able to walk in last week and go, yeah, everybody wants everything at once. So you guys decide which one's important, but I'm going to work on the ones I know are important. And if I don't hear from you, then I'll figure I'm on the right path. Developing that into a habit, that's a different story. That takes time. But having this plan, and that's one of the things I was telling Emily this morning, just knowing that I'm going to work out every morning, and then I'm going to have a Shakeology and a recovery, and I'm going to put a banana in it, and I'm going to do the lunch thing. I'm not going to miss my grandkids' time. I'm going to have dinner ready. I actually planned out next week's meals for the whole week and bought this weekend for it. And Sunday, I don't care what the reason is. Sunday's the rest day. There will not be a rest day in between. No matter how bad my day feels, I'm going to work out. And if I'm getting injured, I'm just going to lighten up the weight and then call my chiropractor. So it's having a plan makes things easy for me. Not having a plan got me where I am now. So I guess that's the trigger. I overextend myself, and I let myself get overextended.
Hi. Well, for me, I wrote down several is parties, of course, get-togethers, visiting friends, church fellowship. I go to church 2 times a week. So, that is a trigger. After we have Bible studies on Wednesdays. So after the Bible study, we have a fellowship, or during the Bible study, we have a fellowship. I usually take food. One day I just decided I'm not going to take unhealthy. I'm going to start taking healthy, right? Providing maybe parfait, fruit. But those are big ones. The biggest one is like Brett, prioritizing work over myself. I usually would make something to eat for where I work. I am like a personal chef to a small company. So they hire me every day to take food. So what I used to do, I would just eat whatever I had in hand, whatever was in front of me, I would just eat it, right? So now that's why I mentioned last time that now they don't know, but they're eating healthier. Because I know whatever I make, I'm probably gonna eat that. But now, I sometimes make something on the side that I know that is good for me. So those, and then I used to be a late night snacker, right before I go to bed, I would get some chips, salsa, lime, and then a big old Dr. Pepper or Coke. But, those habits have been slowly but surely been going away at least these 2 weeks, right? But yeah, those are the biggest ones. I had a cheat item. So I had 2 parties in one day. So they were giving burgers in both parties. So I said, I'm gonna eat half of the burger right now and then half of the burger on the other party. So I need to have my priorities straight, definitely. And like Brett said, making a plan in the morning. Sometimes I run late and because I'm making the plan in the morning, but I remember you saying we have to make it at night, right? So this week and last week I've been, getting to work a little bit late for making a little bit of more priority for what I have to do for myself.
Okay, I wrote down a couple things too. Mine is a big one of mine is being overwhelmed and from my day and being tired at the end of the day cooking for my family. I do not enjoy cooking as much as other people like Iris that loves to cook. I love going out to eat. I love to be being served like at a restaurant. It's quick, fast, and there's no cleanup. That's mine. So being overwhelmed and tired, it was always my excuse, like, let's get a pizza, let's order in, let's get a burger. So now I plan my meals at the beginning of the week. I plan my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what I'm going to eat. Well, I usually eat what everybody else does, but a little bit different because I'm following my containers and my protein. So but for me, I just, yeah, I plan it ahead of time so that I'm making sure that I'm eating what's in my containers, what's following the guideline. And it's not as overwhelming. And if I went to get myself out of that hungry stage in the evening, because I am a night eater as well, I am starting to make myself teas. I'm not was never a tea drinker, and now I am, and I'm actually liking tea without sugar or stevia or anything in it. I just drink the plain herbal tea. And what else with that? And water. I'm having my water, and if I really need, I will take a walk around the bay just to get my headspace and out of that, so that I don't eat or put anything in my mouth. And parties are also the same thing. I've been just doing exactly what you said, Carmen. Just no, thank you. And if it's a party and I'm invited, I'll always now bring a fruit tray or a vegetable tray, so that I know it's going to be there for me. I plan that so that I'll be the one bringing the healthy snacks. So, and that's my plate kind of thing. And they never really know that I'm dieting then, because I'm just grabbing the good food. So, or not dieting, but you know what I mean, watching my weight or whatever. So it's
Eating
good that
according
way.
to your goals.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's working. It's working. So
I wrote a lot like most people, but for me, I work from home and my husband doesn't. So he leaves at 6 in the morning and comes back around 9 at night. So for me, I'm just like coming, there's nobody looking at me and I can eat whatever I want to eat. But the most important thing that I've actually learned today, and what Karen has said, is to make my habits a priority, because I'll go sit at my desk. I'm an IT project manager. So right now, I have a lot of stress at work because I just got 2 new teams and I'm building them from the ground up. And so it's very stressful to deliver to the different managers, just like Brent. And so I find myself just sitting there and not going to the fridge maybe to eat my food. Or when my water, I like drinking with this because it's 40 ounces and I'll do like 4 of this a day. So I'll feel the laziness to go ahead and fill my water. So one of the things I've just decided, I need to make my habits a priority. And then some snacks like the celery, when I cut them, I can move with them over to my desk. And then because I work from home, one of the things that I love to do now that my legs are not swollen anymore, prior to that, during my lunchtime, I'd just come to the couch and sleep for the whole 1 hour. So I've decided just to be getting out of the house during my lunchtime and just walking around the block to have some fresh air and just to freshen my mind, and hopefully that will help. But most importantly, my lazy habits, I need to be intentional about them and kicking them out of my life.
My list includes 4 things, and they're kind of interrelated. One is cooking. The kitchen is my happy place. Whenever we move, my kitchen is usually 20 boxes. I'm a gadget person. You name it, I've got it. And so that's my happy place, whether I'm cooking for myself or the rest of my family. And 6 years vegan, most of the time I'm cooking for meat eaters. And so I've gotten it down to a pretty decent science where I don't have to taste things, but there are some things that I do need to taste them because they get a little salty, and then one taste becomes like multiple. So I know that that's a trigger for me, especially when I'm making something like potato salad, and then it's just a slippery slope. And then also planning my meals out. I eat by taste. So I usually do my meals in the morning. I do take my containers with me, but doing it on like Sunday, usually by Wednesday, I'm like, yeah, I don't really have a taste for that. And so then it goes way left. And so really trying to find out those versions of meal prep that work for me, that also align with my schedule, and then cooking for the meat eaters in my house, in addition to what I need to do. So I know to avoid that, I've got to get up and prepare. So that 5 a.m. alarm is really critical for me to be able to get up. And by 7:15, I need to be hustling a 12-year-old out and through all of his activities. So I try to make sure I've got everything prepared, but I know if I don't, then I'm just grabbing something. Or the other extreme, which is I don't eat. And unfortunately, in the industry I work in a fast-paced office, a lot of the people on my staff do the same thing, and we'll look up, it'll be 3 o'clock. We've hit a lot of targets. We've done a lot. We'll be like, did anybody eat lunch? But I also know I'm an emotional eater and I internalize a lot of things. And one of those big triggers for me is social media. Not my social media, getting on social media, but in the position I serve in, there are, when we're doing well, it's a great day on social media. When we're not doing well and the alumni are not happy, the boosters aren't happy, then it's social media. So I don't read it. Other people will call and tell me about it, or somebody will send it to me and say, hey, this is out there. And I'm like, there's a reason I don't read it. Like, even I tell my husband, I'm like, okay, if you read it, wonderful. If I really need to know about it, let me know. So I know that for me, so trying to balance through those. So one, I stay away from it. I'll get on Messenger, I'll go live, but it's very rare that I'm reading social media. For that reason, I keep my inner circle a very small inner circle, and my family is not up for grabs. And so I keep that world very small in that space as well. But then also just continue to have the boundaries. Those boundaries have become very important for me just in this position and serving here. And I just started year 4. So really still getting that balance and helping others to have that same understanding of those boundaries that I've set. But for me, knowing that it's a major trigger for me.
I have a ton of triggers, but I guess the best way to boil it down would be if I had a completely perfect trigger-free day. So that gets rid of half the list. I have a Barbara that comes out at night. He goes to sleep. It's been this way my whole life. My dad years ago said that if we ever got ice cream, I would just wait till mine melted in front of my brother and sister. And then when they had eaten theirs, I would just start eating mine. Who does that? That's just wrong. So it's always like this little secret gift at the end of the day. And at some point I've gotten in the habit of, okay, if I get hungry at 10, I start drinking a Coke. So I start drinking a Coke, drink Coke, eat a healthy dinner. Depending on how healthy it is, will depend on how much Barbara eats later when you go to bed. Probably didn't know all this, did you?
I did.
You did? And as my son is getting older, he's like, Mom, why do you have all this food in your closet? And he'll just take it and put it in the cupboard. And I feel so naked and exposed. I'm like, but I can't explain it because I don't know what it is. It's just cuckoo. So yeah, my trigger is when everyone's asleep, Barbara comes out. So
hello. So my triggers is you know what, it was late night. Like the first week we got started, it was late night eating. I fixed that by just going to bed early. I go to bed, I'm in bed by like 9 o'clock now, just so I won't eat. And prior to that, I would tell myself like, okay, just eat a piece of fruit. It's okay. Like you won't see it in the morning, but that didn't help. So I just started going to bed early. But my trigger right now, it actually just happened this weekend. I had met my 5-pound weight loss and I was like, okay, my item will be a bag of chips. So I ate the bag of chips and I did good. And then throughout, I had already ate my cheat item. So then throughout the entire day, my husband and my son was asking me to make fried chicken. And I've been feeding them all this healthy food all week. Everyone has been losing weight. And they kept begging me for fried chicken. So of course I'm the cook. So I went on ahead at 9 p.m. I finally said, you know what? I'll make the fried chicken. I had an entire conversation with myself, like, you're not going to eat the chicken. You're going to cook it. You're only going to cook enough just so those 2 people can eat and there's not going to be any left over. By the time I got finished cooking the fried chicken, my husband had fell asleep and it was only me and my son. Before I knew it, I ate 5 pieces of chicken. Like it was ridiculous. So that's my trigger, cooking the food that I cannot eat. I think to fix that, I'm just not gonna let it happen again. Like I can't cook anything that I can't eat. And I feel like that's important right now. Like I have to put me first. I was feeling bad for them because they really wanted this meal, but I'm just gonna have to say no because I obviously can't handle cooking that type of food.
Okay, hi. My biggest trigger is celebrations. I've got 3 kids who are challenging themselves and meeting their goals all the time, and I always want to celebrate them, and holidays and everything with our family. But my house is the central one, so all these celebrations and events and holidays are always at my house, and I always want to make sure that everyone's happy and well fed and just enjoying themselves. So I surround us with like really good, really bad food, and we all have a good time. So I think today was actually my first challenge because we had everyone over for Memorial Day and I planned the heck out of it. We just grilled, so it was all like healthy, and we had Impossible burgers and marinated chicken, asparagus, corn on the cob, watermelon, and then there was chips and beans on the table for them, and I made sure they walked out the door and did not stay in my house.
Good job.
What's my biggest trigger that I'm dealing with? I think for me, it's the emotional extremes. So where I might be either really frustrated or really happy. I noted that, like, I'm recognizing that when I'm frustrated, I crave salty things like Nisha's mentioned of chicken that totally resonate. That's the stressor food, and I can legitimately pinpoint just things that my mother did that we would eat fried chicken with, when somebody died or something, something tragic happened. So when I feel a level of frustration and stress around that, I crave those things. With grief, it's like sweet things and normally, since this is my first rodeo, I've gotten good at dealing with stuff at home and dealing with stuff like if I'm going to a conference. But this particular weekend, we're traveling for vacation / a holiday and family event, and I thought I was ready for the emotion of it all, and yet that kind of took me a little bit by surprise. And honestly, my fault wasn't necessarily what I used to do in the past, which was kind of just, I call it, fall off the wagon, turn around and eat the wagon. I did not do that. And yet I operated what you call in what you call the gray zone, right? So not measuring, I made sure I got my water in, and I told myself that if I worked out in the morning, I might wake people up and so on. Then if I got up later, so making sure that my internal dialogue is the one that's reminding me of the reason why I'm in this process in the first place, and keeping that commitment to myself, and then recognizing that I thrive in structure. And like I said, when I have a plan for when I'm home, but I did not have a plan for when I was here. And honestly, the conversation that I had with Etienne and my mentor as well helped me just kind of really turn it for today and the rest of the days that we're here.
Like nobody ever plans to fail. Nobody ever plans to get off track, but we do fail to plan. And where people fail to plan, failure is always coming. It is always, when you don't plan to succeed and you're just winging it and throwing a bunch of crap against the wall and expecting it to stick. And especially in our case, right? We're dealing with habits that we've created for a long time. And so like none of us got here unhealthy without bad habits. And so as we're coming into this third week, it's running every decision that you're making through the question of, does this align with my long-term goals? So it's not sacrificing what we want long-term for what we want right now. It's realizing, no, I want this cheesecake in the moment. I want this fried chicken in the moment. But do I want this chicken more than I want to wear the skinny jeans? Do I want this chicken more than I want to be healthy? Do I want this chicken more than I want to feel comfortable and confident in my own skin? Do I want this more? And does this align with what I'm fighting for and who I'm fighting for? Is this chicken more powerful than me? No, because in 24 hours, it's going to be caca, crunchy caca. And that is not worth it. And so, listen, it's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. And every time you say no, every time you resist, you are growing, that you are strengthening that willpower muscle. And eventually, someday in the not too distant future, you will look back and you will think, gosh, this thing that used to tempt me, this thing that used to have power over me, this thing that used to derail me no longer does.